everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys my June mid-month wrap-up, and I have 20 books to discuss in today's video, so let's just go ahead and get into it. First up, we have The Husband Sitter by Jessica Cain. So you will notice in this video that I have read quite a few Jessica Cain novellas recently. I think I've already read like 3 or 4 this month alone, and I'm planning on reading more and more because I am just obsessed with her. As you guys may have seen in my mid-year book freakout tag video, I will link that up in the cards above if you are interested. So this is a novella that I was turned on to from Brie from In Love and Words. I don't think I would have read this if she hadn't talked about it, because this is definitely, in my eyes, one of her more obscure novellas. It's also one of her older backlist titles because I think she wrote this one in 2018. And the plot for this one is quite odd. We have our heroine, I don't remember names anymore, I'm sorry, but she's a very strong empath. She has the ability to both take on emotions that other people exhibit, and she can also influence the emotions of people around her. And so she grows up in this commune type environment, and when she turns 18, her mother essentially kind of kicks her out of the commune and tells her, you know, you have this gift, you need to share it with the world because it's something beautiful. And I do agree with that. Like, I loved following this main character because she was just very unique in her empathic abilities and things like that. So essentially Astrid, that's the main character's name, she answers this very vague ad on the internet, and so she goes to meet these 3 women, but essentially they're looking for a woman like Astrid to help their husbands gain their confidence back in different ways, because all 3 men kind of have different issues going on, and that includes sexually. So yeah, you need to suspend your disbelief with this novella in particular for sure. I mean, Jessica Cain novellas are ridiculous, but this one is on another level, I have to agree. And so what ensues is that we get 3 different chapters where she's interacting with these 3 different husbands and helping them become more confident again and having really hot sex with them. And there's also some really fun kinks involved with the 3 of them. This was so much fun and one of the hottest novellas that I've ever read. Like, I couldn't give it less than 5 stars. I wholeheartedly recommend it if you're looking for something very different. It's definitely not a traditional kind of romance at all. I mean, there is a happily ever after, but it's very different and just really fun. So highly recommend this one. All right, next up we have Just Like Heaven by Julia Quinn. I did finally get to read the first 3 books in her Smythe Smith quartet, which I was really looking forward to. So this one is a brother's best friend trope. So we have Honoria, and her brother Daniel was involved in a duel where he actually injured the other person in the duel, and so he had to run away to the continent. And we have Marcus, who is Daniel's best friend, and Daniel asked Marcus to look after Honoria while he's been away, and things happen between the 2 of them. It's a very sweet romance for sure. I ended up giving this 3 stars though. This was not my favorite Julia Quinn, unfortunately. I feel like one of the things that just didn't work for me is that there is a nursing back to health trope. Marcus gets ill essentially, and so Honoria is taking care of him, but I feel like that part of the story went on for a really long time, so I feel like there wasn't enough time to actually develop this romance because Marcus was pretty much unconscious for a good part of this book. So while we're here, I thought I would just talk about the other 2 books in the quartet that I read. So the next one is A Night Like This. Now this one is about Daniel, who, like I said, he was involved in that duel that went wrong. Now he is back in London because the man he was in the duel with, whose name is Hugh, who also gets his own romance in The Sum of All Kisses, he essentially went to find Daniel and it was like, listen, I have no hard feelings towards you anymore, like, you need to come back home, because they were best friends. And so this is a romance between him and Anne, I believe her name is, yes, who is the governess to Daniel's younger cousins. And so yeah, things go on from there. I give this one 4 stars. I enjoy this one a lot more than Just Like Heaven. I always enjoy a historical romance with a good villain, and I do think that the villain in this one was pretty solid. So yeah, recommend this one. It was a good time. And then the last book of the quartet that I read is The Sum of All Kisses. So in this one we have Hugh, who's the main character, who was the other man involved in that infamous duel. And then we have Sarah, who is the cousin of Daniel, and she has hated Hugh ever since this duel happened. She truly believes that Hugh ruined all of their lives, because after this duel happened and after Daniel was essentially banished from the country, basically all of their reputations, anybody who is related to Daniel, all of their reputations have been sullied. And so yeah, this one is a hate to love trope, really adorable. Gave this one 4 stars as well. Really enjoyable. I mean, I think this is a pretty solid historical romance series. I do think that the Bridgerton books have more standouts overall. All right, next up we have another Jessica Kane novella, and this one is An Angel for the Devil. This one, y'all, the plot is wild, and that is what drew me into this novella, but I also really like the cover. Like, I really like the covers that Jessica Kane novellas have. But this one is about our main character who is 18. You'll also see a trope commonly used in Jessica Kane novellas that the heroine is just about 18 years old. She's very innocent. She's a virgin. In this one in particular, she's so innocent that it's a little bit annoying, but it still somehow kind of worked for me. But yeah, we have our heroine. She's 18. Her family is very, very poor. They live in an apartment building, you know, for low-income families, and they are unable to pay their rent. And then we have the landlord, who is this billionaire. He's very straight-laced, and he is notorious for evicting people if they miss even like 1 month of rent. And so their family is just terrified that they're going to get evicted. The heroine's mother decides that the best course of action is to essentially trade her daughter and her daughter's virginity for them to be able to stay in their apartment. And it's just as ridiculous as it sounds, but I adored this and I had to give it 5 stars. So let me just read some things for you guys that I personally really loved about this novella. This is referencing my Goodreads review. I said this novella features an intimidating billionaire hero, also a straight-laced hero losing control, a really sweet heroine who breaks through the hero's hard exterior. There's also daddy kink, and we are not going to analyze why I enjoy that kink so much. We're not going to talk about it. And the perfect amount of groveling at the end. And of course, I always love when groveling is involved. So yeah, this was absolutely fantastic. So addictive, so entertaining, so hot. Yes, there's cheesy moments, because that is yet another thing that Jessica Kane is pretty well known for at this point, but her novellas and her writing just really works for me. Next up we have Visions of Heat by Nalini Singh. This is book 2 in her Side Changeling series. I read book 1, I think last month at some point, and really enjoyed it. This is a paranormal romance series where we're in a world where there are 2 kinds of humans. There are humans that are psychics, essentially, and then there are humans that can shift into animals. So far in the first 2 books, we've only been following people that can shift into either wolves or cats, like big cats. So this one is about Faith, who is of the Psi. She's one of the psychic humans. She is a type of Psi who can see visions of the future. And these type of Psi are heavily guarded and protected because they have a tendency to go insane. And so she lives in this compound like by herself, I think. And then we have Vaughn, who is a panther shifter, and he is a part of the same pack that the hero from book 1 is a part of, and I think I enjoyed this romance more than the first book, and I also really have enjoyed seeing the world expand with each book. I think this is one of those series that I'm gonna have to read at least a few more books to really get a good sense of the series and of the story and Nalini Singh's writing style and all of that. Because at this point I really don't have much of an opinion except that I've enjoyed them so far, and I also gave this one 4 stars. All right, next one we have a book that is totally bonkers. This is Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This was a book that I was turned on to by Jess from Peace Love Books, and I'm trying to think of who else. I think Haley from Haley in Bookland really loved this one as well. I really enjoyed it as well. I gave it 4 stars. So how do I describe this book? All right, we have our main character, Medi. At the beginning of this book, she goes on a blind date with this dude that ends up being kind of an asshole. They get into a car accident because she's essentially trying to defend herself from him maybe trying to assault her. And so they get into this car accident and he ends up dying at the scene. And so now she has no idea what to do with this body. So she calls up her mom and her three aunties, and they swoop in and try to save the day. There is also a wedding going on during this whole book. There's also a second chance romance with this guy Nathan that she dated back in college. There is a lot going on in this book. And I know that setup of, you know, there being a dead body doesn't sound like it would be all that funny, and I was skeptical going in as well, but like, trust me, this book is so freaking funny and entertaining. So good. I cannot wait to see what Jessie Q Sutanto comes out with next. The random thing that I loved about this book is that there is a Chinese-Indonesian wedding going on during the story, and I loved learning about the different traditions that happen at these weddings. That's something that I had never learned about, and there's just so many fantastic side characters. I love the aunties and Meddy's mom, and Nathan is such a sweet guy. I think my only gripe with this book is that I wish that there could have been a way to focus a bit more on the romance and a little bit less on the antics and the hijinks and all of that, but other than that, this book was pretty fantastic and I highly recommend it. Next, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books that I want to talk about. I featured in my reading vlog where I did the Mafia Romance Readathon, and I tried out Mafia romances for the first time. So I'm just gonna say, go watch that vlog if you're interested in my in-depth thoughts about all of these books, but I'm just gonna kind of quickly mention them and my star ratings and everything. So the first one is Heat of the Night by Nicole Stewart. This is an MMF poly mafia romance, and it was pretty good. I gave it 4 stars. Next, I read Beautiful and Dirty, which is book 1 in Katrina Jackson's The Family series, which is a mafia romance series. Gave this one 4 stars as well. Next, I read the first 2 books in the Born in Blood Mafia Chronicles series by Cora Riley. The first book in that is Bound by Honor. Gave that one 4 stars. The next one is Bound by Duty. Also gave that 4 stars, but I enjoyed this one a bit more than Bound by Honor. It was so good. I am really enjoying these books by Cora Riley because you'll see a little bit later on in this wrap up that I also went on to book 3 and really enjoyed that one as well. Also read The Mobster's Masseuse by Jessa Kane. You guys already know I can't stop reading her novellas. Gave this one 4 stars. Wasn't my absolute favorite novella by her, but it was still a fun time. And then the final book that I read for that readathon was The Marriage Contract by Katie Robert. This is book 1 in her O'Malley series, which is a mafia romance series, specifically an Irish mafia series. Gave that one 3.5 stars. Definitely my least favorite book of the readathon, and definitely my least favorite book that I've read by Katie Robert, but like, it wasn't terrible, it just wasn't amazing. So yeah, that is all the books that I read for that readathon. Like I said, definitely check out that vlog. It will be linked up in the cards above if you want to know my in-depth thoughts about the books that I just mentioned. Next up, I am so excited to discuss this book with you guys. This is Yes and I Love You by Ronnie Lauren. It could be Roni Lauren. I think it's Ronnie Lauren, not really sure. This is a book that I was turned on to by someone that I follow on Instagram. She's a bookstagrammer. I can't remember her name, but she's also pretty popular on Book Talk, and I love her content. If I can remember, I'll find her Instagram account and I'll link it down in the description below because I love her. And she is the only person that I have seen on social media talk about this book, and it's absolutely fantastic. Let me be the first one to say, I know this cover is weird. I'm not a big fan of it either. I think if this book had a different cover, it would be infinitely more popular. It's a contemporary romance that takes place in New Orleans, which I did not know that going in, that this took place in New Orleans. Like, I needed to know that, you know? I probably would have read this sooner if I had known that. But this is about our main character, Holland. She actually has Tourette syndrome. I loved seeing that kind of representation in a romance novel, and from what I've seen from Own Voices reviewers, it sounds like the representation is well done. And honestly, I don't know if the author herself has Tourette's. I'm not really sure. I can't speak to that. So what's cool about Holland is that she's a freelance writer and she writes for this article, this review article in New Orleans called Ms. Poppy, and she takes on this kind of anonymous persona and she reviews movies and live entertainment and different things like that, and it's a very popular column at this point. And then we have Jasper, our hero, who is an improv actor and he also has ADHD. And yeah, the two of them meet because they both work in this like workspace in New Orleans. I guess that's the best way to describe it. One of the things that really surprised me about this book is how hot the steamy scenes were. Again, you would not expect that from this cover. Like, I don't understand this cover at all because the story inside just, in my opinion, doesn't really match what's on the outside. Something else I loved about this story is that we have a bit of a Grump Sunshine trope going on, where Holland, I would say she's just more guarded because of her Tourette's syndrome. People tend to judge her because with her Tourette's, she essentially has facial tics that are really hard for her to control. She also has a friend, Cal, who has verbal Tourette's. So he will insert random words into sentences and things like that. And I loved seeing that kind of representation as well. But yeah, so she's more guarded, and then Jasper is definitely more outgoing and more sunshiny. And I always love reading Grump Sunshines where the heroine is more grumpy and the hero is more sunshiny. I am a sucker for that trope. Can't recommend this enough. I'm really looking forward to reading book 2 in this series, which is going to follow one of Holland's friends, and I'm just so excited to read it. Next book I want to discuss is Filthy Vows by Alessandra Torre. This is a book that I was so excited about reading because the way it was pitched to me was that it was kind of a marriage in trouble story, although I wouldn't say marriage in trouble, more of a like, this married couple is like stable, but their marriage could be better and more exciting. And I was told that it was about this couple experimenting sexually to liven up their marriage. And that's not really what this is. I mean, there's a bit of that, but this book is essentially a lot more ordinary than the plot that I just pitched to you. I mean, yes, it is about a married couple. They're kind of in a rut in their marriage, but most of the steamy scenes are pretty normal sex scenes between the husband and wife. And then at pretty much the very end is where they try out something kinkier. It actually involves a threesome situation with the husband's best friend, and I really enjoyed that scene, but by the time that scene came along, I was already kind of over this book, so I didn't like enjoy it as much as I would have if the rest of the book was just as good as the end. So all of that being said, I gave this 3 stars. I definitely expected more. I just expected this to be more fun and entertaining. And it's just, yeah, at the end of the day, my takeaway from this book is that it was just kind of bland. Next, I'm quickly going to talk about a reread that I did so far this month, and that is The Bride Test by Helen Huang. This is book 2 in her companion romance series. The first book is The Kiss Quotient, which you guys know at this point, The Kiss Quotient is one of my favorite romances of all time. And this one is following Kai, who is the cousin of Michael, who was the hero of The Kiss Quotient. He has autism spectrum disorder. And then we have our heroine, Esme. And Kai's mother decides to go to Vietnam to essentially get Kai a mail order bride. Because Kai never dates anyone, he just wants to be alone. Perfectly understandable, because I also don't mind being alone. But anyways, his mother goes to Vietnam, meets Esme. So she ends up inviting Esme to come over to the States for the summer to see if her and Kai would fit well together as a couple. And when I first read this book, I gave it 4 stars. I think I read it back in 2019 for, what was it, like a contemporary-a-thon vlog. I'll link that vlog up in the cards above if you're interested. But this time around, I couldn't give it less than 5 stars because I just fell so hard for Kai and Esme this time around. And also, if you read the author's note at the end that Helen Huang does, it will make you love Esme even more than you already do, because Esme is based off of her own mother and her own mother's experiences, because her mother also immigrated from Vietnam and had to create a life for herself. And it's just, I'm so glad that she included that author's note in here, because it really upped my reading experience. And oh, I just love these characters so much. And I need Kwan's book, which is The Heart Principle, now. I need that book in my hands as soon as possible. I think it comes out in July or August, and I just cannot wait. All right, we have to talk about another Jessica Cain novella that I am absolutely obsessed with at this point, and that is My Best Friend, My Stalker by Jessica Cain. This is one of her novellas that she's been doing that feature stalker heroes, but pretty much all of her novellas feature like obsessive and possessive heroes, but I will say that this hero is definitely on another level in terms of that. So basically the hero and heroine meet because the heroine is literally running away from her stepbrother. They live in a trailer together and he is trying to sexually assault her, and so she literally runs from him, and the hero, I cannot remember names anymore, I'm sorry, but he's literally just driving down the road, sees her, like instantly falls in love with her, and takes her away from her stepbrother, and so the hero and the heroine end up living together as roommates.
And they were roommates.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
Yeah, he starts stalking her, he starts harming men that try to start dating her. Like, he's definitely taking things to another level for sure. And this is definitely the darkest romance that I've read from Jessica Cain, so definitely be aware of that before going into this. But like, I'm here for stalker romances. I don't know what that says about me. I think it's just because I love obsessive and possessive heroes, and stalkers like this in this kind of book are that to the extreme. Something that I really loved about this novella is that at the end, they didn't have children. Usually in Jessica Cain novellas, the epilogue is them like having at least like 2 or 3 kids. But I loved that they didn't have kids, because there's literally a line in the novella about the fact that they are so obsessed with each other. Like towards the end of the novella, she starts stalking him back, and that's part of kind of their foreplay. But they are so obsessed with one another that they can't even fathom sharing their love with children, if that makes sense. Like, they don't want to share each other with anybody else, and I think that that's absolutely iconic and over the top and amazing. Next up, we have Bound by Hatred by Cora Riley. This is book 3 in that mafia romance series that I mentioned earlier on in this video. So this one features Gianna and Matteo. They are characters that we have seen in the other 2 books in the series, and this one's definitely a hate to love situation. I was so looking forward to getting to their book because their dynamic is so fun and entertaining and also kind of unique. I haven't read a hate to love romance quite like theirs. Yeah, it was a good time. Had to give this one 4 stars as well. I still think Bound by Duty is my favorite book of the series so far, but I just think that all these books are so solid and so well paced. Highly, highly recommend them if you are someone like me that hasn't read very many mafia romances. I think this is a really great series and author to read to get into that genre. So then the next book I want to discuss is Hang the Moon by Alexandria Bellfleur. This is book 2 in her companion romance series. The first book of the series is Written in the Stars, which is a book that I read at the very beginning of 2021. And this one features Annie, who is a bisexual heroine, and then we have Brendan, who is a hopeless, hopeless romantic hero. He's actually like the CEO of a dating app. I ended up giving this 3 stars. It was just fine. I think ultimately I enjoyed Written in the Stars, which, like I said, is the first book of this series, a little bit more. That one's a female-female romance that has like a Grump Sunshine trope going on. And this one, I just expected more because I loved Brendan's character so much in the first book, and I loved seeing a hero like this who's a hopeless romantic. The only hero that I can think of that compares to Brendan in that way is Gregory from the Bridgerton series, specifically the 8th book, which is On the Way to the Wedding. He is also very much a hopeless romantic kind of hero. And yeah, like, this was just fine. This is one of those books that's definitely more character driven than plot driven, but the characters, in my opinion, were kind of bland. Especially Annie. Like, she didn't seem all that special to me in terms of romance heroines. All right, last but certainly not least for this video is Neon Gods by Katie Robert. I was so excited going into this book, and I gave it 5 stars. Spoiler alert, I gave this 5 stars. But this one came out like on June 1st, I believe. And I believe this is one of the very few books that Katie Robert has published through a traditional publisher. This one was published by Source Books. And this is a really fun story. It's a Hades and Persephone retelling that takes place in the same universe, by the way, as her Wicked Villain series and her Sabine Valley series. So I wanted to point that out because I loved that connection. But yeah, basically we have our heroine Persephone, and her mother basically just sells her off to Zeus, who is like the leader of this city known as Olympus. This is very much a contemporary feeling world, but everyone has names of like these Greek gods and goddesses. She decides that she has no other choice than to run away from her home and from the life that she's always known. And so she crosses the river into the lower part of the city that this man Hades runs. And yeah, things go on from there. There is a fake dating situation going on because both Hades and Persephone want to get back at Zeus for him being just a terrible human. And so they decide to go into this relationship where Hades will essentially ruin Persephone so that Zeus won't want her anymore. There's also some fun kinky times involved. I loved it just as much as I thought I was going to. I think this is an amazing start to what is going to be an entire series taking place in this world. I have one small gripe, however. After reading quite a few of Katie Roberts' indie published books, I kind of feel like she was holding back a little bit to please her publisher. That's just the vibe that I got from this book. I just wanted her to go a bit further with the kink. Although I will say there's like a decent amount going on, especially with like exhibitionism, because Hades owns like a sex club kind of. But there's also like a dom brat kind of situation trope going on, and I wish that Katie Robert would have gone further into that, because when that was kind of introduced, like I was so here for it, but that didn't end up really being a thing throughout the book because Hades and Persephone started falling in love rather quickly, and so the dom brat thing kind of fizzled rather quickly because of that. So I personally think she could have gone further with this book. That's just my opinion. I still loved it though, still gave it 5 stars, and I would definitely recommend this book if you're someone that hasn't read anything by Katie Robert before, because I think this is a really great introduction into her writing and her storytelling. All right guys, that is going to be the 20 books I have read so far in the month of June. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I would also love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to tell me about some of the books that you've been reading during this month. And yeah, with that being said, I would love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!